Hi, and welcome back to Point Serve. Point Serve is the first podcast of Cross Point Church here in Beckley, West Virginia. And this podcast is designed to help you grow in your leadership, no matter where you find yourself, whether it is in a sacred space or in the marketplace. And we here at Cross Point Church desire to help you become more influential where God has placed you. And so that's the purpose of Point Serve, and we hope to add to that. Now, we are into November, and we are in the second part of our discussion on leading a stagnant organization. And this is true whether it's a church or whether it is some other form of business that you are involved in. And as we think about that, as we think about what that looks like and how you can be a better leader, we talked about some things last time. We're just going to review them very quickly. Some of the things that we talked about last time is when you are leading an organization, some churches and also some businesses are just easier. Some are just easier to lead than others, and we need to recognize that because sometimes we think all places are the same, and they're not. And so we need to recognize that. Also, we need to recognize that some leaders have a gift. Some leaders are more gifted when it comes to changing the dynamic and when it comes to recognizing what's needed. Some are just better at it than others. Also, we need to recognize that even if your congregation or if your business has plateaued, I don't have to join into that. I don't have to be a part of that. If others choose not to grow, if they choose not to move forward, I don't have to participate in that. Also, we need to understand that some organizations should grow and some are not ready for it because growth always brings change. There's always something that happens in the process that brings change, and some places just are not ready for that. And so when you and I recognize that and we see it, then we can get to the place to where we begin to put things in place so that growth can happen. Because if we're not ready for it and growth suddenly happens, we won't be able to take advantage of that. Also, we need to understand that sometimes our problems aren't everybody else's problems. In church life, the problem may not be a disgruntled partner in ministry. It may not be a disgruntled leader in ministry. The pastor's problem is not always everybody else's problem. When you're working in a secular space, the manager's problem may not always be the person's problem who is leading a team or responsible for a project. Those projects may not always be there. And so that's what we talked about last time. Now, what do we talk about now? How do we continue recognizing these things when we're called to somewhere that is plateaued or we're called to somewhere that is stagnant? I know from a pastoral standpoint, the next thing I'm going to share with you sounds real and it sounds important, but it's also real and it's also important regardless of what you are leading. And here's what it is. The most urgent task is to become a person of intense prayer. Intense prayer. Specific prayer. A person who is calling out to God on behalf of the organization that you lead, because there are people's lives, their eternal destinies. All of those things are crucial, regardless of where God has placed you, regardless of where God has called you. All of those things are vital. And being a leader who is praying for the people around you, it totally changes your perspective about them. It totally changes things that when you talk to God about them, it may help you see something there inside their lives. And regardless of the organization that you lead, whether it may be going through a very healthy time right now or a struggling time right now, being a person of intense prayer helps you tune in to God's perspective, no matter what you're leading. And we need to make sure that we set aside time, that we calendar time. Because if you and I don't calendar time, it just doesn't happen. I mean, there are times at the end of the year as I'm leading and learning into the next year that I take a couple days or 3 that I separate myself from what's going on in the day-to-day operations of Crosspoint, and I spend time with God as to what He would have us do over the next 12 months. And I spend time walking with Him, and it's amazing what He shows me, because as the year unfolds, as things begin to come into play, it's amazing. We've got a young couple in the life of the church right now who were instrumental in purchasing a house and doing some things with that house that they had planned to do. Yet now some life things have changed. And God showed them how in all of this process, that house they were going to be needing, they were going to be walking through it, they were going to be working with it. And it's really cool how God does that 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months out. But if you don't spend time walking with Him and talking with Him and taking advantage of things that He may lay on your heart as the leader, it's amazing what you can see Him do just down the road a little bit. But you know, as a leader, when you're dealing with a stagnant environment, you can change you. Remember I said a moment ago, just because others choose to plateau, you don't have to. And as a leader, I remember as a young leader especially, I would get books and I would go to conferences and I would get so excited and come back and begin to share some things. And a lot of times, you be careful when God's birthing those things inside of you. Be careful who you share those things with. Because not everybody's ready to see it. Not everybody's ready to experience it. But I also learned after a few of those negative experiences that I would take key principles away. Not the whole thing. There's no way you can incorporate everything that you learn at a conference or everything that you hear, but you can take 1 or 2 key pieces and begin to implement those things right where you are. And those 1 or 2 key pieces help God direct your life and your leadership. And don't be surprised in the value of the small improvements. All of us like the big things. We like to see the big processes and the big picture take place. But don't ever underestimate what God does in those small things. Don't ever underestimate those small victories, how God takes those little things and He changes people's lives with those. And sometimes, especially in a stagnant situation, you can look at those small things and you know, when the Word of God tells us don't decry the days of small beginnings. Sometimes we have to take what we consider a small beginning and make it even smaller than that. Because you have to be able to share something that other people can absorb. They can allow the intake to happen. It's kind of like when you have a 1-year-old. My grandson Raleigh, he is a little over 1 year old now. And he's got a few teeth. He doesn't have all of them. So not everything that I eat or his mom and dad eat, there's no way that he can ingest all of those things. He doesn't have the ability. As a leader, you have to begin to look and see what those around you, what they can take in. And then you begin to feed them that way. I remember as a kid growing up in Wyoming County, West Virginia, a little farm on Laurel Branch. We had a commercial farm just over from ours, and they had cattle. And I remember in the springtime of the year watching the calves come out, and they would come out and they would feed the cattle, and they would have the hay and they would have the things there, and the young calves would try to keep up with the bigger cows, and it didn't work. They weren't able to do that. As a leader of any organization, make sure that what you are presenting and what you're sharing with the people around you is something that they can take in. Schedule small events. Schedule work days if you're in the life of a church. I remember when I came to Cross Point many years ago now, they weren't able to grow in congregational size at this point. But what I did find was that they could grow around doing things to the building. And we would have work days, and we changed the paint color. We changed a number of things inside the building that they could wrap their head around, and it encouraged them to know it was okay to begin to dream again. So whatever small step you think you can take, it may take one smaller yet, but find it. Still take the step. Leader, pastor, manager, entrepreneur. Still take those small steps forward and see what God can do with that. And lastly, this is one that gets lost, I think, a lot in our culture today, is thank people for what they do. Don't take for granted what they do. Thank them for what they do. One pastor years ago put together a process, and he said every day I would make a call to 3 people. Every day. He said every day I would write 3 postcards. Every workday. And he said every workday I would visit 1 person. He said that allowed me to pastor 7 people a day. I touched people's lives 7 times. Every day I was able to do that. And I remember I mimicked that. And one day I was visiting in somebody's home, and I walked down the hallway, and inside a picture, and these were older folks, just tucked on the front of a picture frame going down the hall, was a postcard that took me just a few minutes to write, but it impacted their life in a very powerful way. I know that we don't write postcards very much anymore. We do everything electronically, yet I can tell you for that particular person, that postcard touched their lives in a way that no email, in a way that no meme, in a way that nothing else that I had ever done touched their life to the point to where they saved it. You have that opportunity every day, leader, to thank people. As a pastor, we thank people for so many things. There are just some ways that you can do that. So today, as you're looking over the 10 things that we've talked about and leading something that is stagnant or something that's plateaued or something that's just stuck, I hope over the last 2 months that you can take these 10 things and maybe write them down, put them on a Post-it note to where you can look over them and see ways that you can lead people better. Thank you so much for being a part of Point Serve. This is the first podcast of Cross Point Church in Beckley, West Virginia. It is designed to help you grow in your leadership. If you would do us a huge favor, hit like on YouTube, because that's how we increase our market share in the marketplace of ideas. And we really would appreciate you doing that. You can also send us an email and let us know that Point Serve has touched your heart today in a way that we don't know about yet. Send us that note. Let us know that this is touching your heart and your life, because we're doing our very best to be a part of something greater than what God has already done. My name's Vondie. I'm the lead pastor here at Cross Point. And Point Serve is produced by Aaron Hampton. Makeup is done by Brittany Ferguson. Justin Davis is our key producer in putting all of the things together that we need for Point Serve to be a part of your life today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hope you've gotten something you can take and share with those around you. Have a great rest of the day.